Hi everyone, this is Rachel, and I am officially back with a new computer, so I can now post videos again. And so the first video I'd like to do as coming back is I would like to share my 5-star reads for the first quarter of 2020. So that would be for the months of January, February, and March. And I was actually kind of surprised as I was looking through my list of what I had read, and I have 11 5-star reads. One is a reread, but I still feel like it's 5 stars. I feel like that rating holds up, so I'm going to include it. Before I begin, I want to do a quick explanation of how I rate things, especially because I'm doing it different in 2020. Before 2020, I've always rated something as 5 stars as I loved it and I want to reread it. 4 stars, I loved it or liked it, but was not interested in rereading it. 3 stars, I liked it. 2 stars, it was okay. 1 stars, did not like it, not for me. But as I've been reading more and listening to more authors' podcasts and reading their blogs, I realize the 1-star rating really is not important at all. So I will no longer be rating things 1 star, just because if it's not for me, it doesn't necessarily mean that the book sucked. Everybody's tastes are different. And so just because a book doesn't work for me doesn't mean that it's not going to work for somebody else. So I'm going to stop using the 1-star rating. This year, however, I am using the compile system that G has over at Book Roast. Just decided to try it out this year after hearing her explanation of it. I got the Excel template from her, and so that is what I've been using, and I like it a lot better. So compile stands for characters, atmosphere, writing, plot, intrigue, logic, and enjoyment. And you rate each one from 1 to 10, and then that scales to give you a number rating. And she even has it where that number rating, which goes between like 1 and 10, then scales to the 5-star Goodreads system. And so then it makes it really easy when you go to Goodreads and you want to choose a rating, since you can't do halves, you have to do wholes. And I was rather surprised on how many books using the system got a 5-star from me. And so I think I like the system better because I think this will allow me to more accurately rate books that I read. And now on Goodreads I have a want to own bookshelf, so I think that will help me distinguish which ones that I want to reread, because anything I own I want to reread. That's how it is. Okay. Alright, so the first book that I gave a 5-star rating to in January was The Disasters by M.K. England. This book came across my radar from Meg over at Meg's Infinity book list, which used to be Tome Infinity. She was reading it with her Discord chat, and so I picked it up. Didn't participate in the chat, but really enjoyed the book. It's a YA new adult space opera kind of theme. Also has LGBTQIA representation. Something that I really loved and thought was well done in this book was the character comes from a happy home. I mean, yeah, parents have expectations for people, and sometimes we decide that we don't like the expectations or we misread how they feel about us, and so there was that hijink. But overall, you don't see a lot of YA books where the main character's parents are happily married with one another. And so that was a really refreshing thing for me to see. Then the next one was The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. And this one is a YA new adult historical fantasy horror fiction. I know that's a whole bunch of them together. To me, I got more of a fantasy vibe, but it's set in like Victorian England. And the horror comes in because it's based off of the daughters of famous horror fiction characters. Every single main character is a female, and I loved the female-centric atmosphere. There are male characters in there, but they are the side characters. They don't advance the plot. It's the women who come together, and I really love that. Then was Cast in Wisdom by Michelle Segura. This is actually number 15 in her Chronicles of Elantris series, and this is an adult fantasy. This is one of the ongoing series that I'm reading that I keep up to date with. Then I have a memoir, Educated by Tara Westover, and this book I can see as being very polarizing. I actually read it for my in-person book club, and there were a lot of mixed opinions about it. For me, I thought that the prose was beautiful. At times a little purple, just with the descriptions. However, for me it worked because I was listening to it as an audiobook. I think if I was reading it, the purple prose would have driven me crazy, just the over description, but it worked really well in an audio format. So if you're interested in this book, audio would probably be the way to go. Then I have The Calculating Stars by Mary Robinette Kowal. And then this is the first book in her Lady Astronaut series. I read her short story, Lady Astronaut of Mars, many years ago. And so then this is a series of how Elma York gets to Mars. I really loved it. It is a adult science fiction, but alternate history. And she even talks about it instead of, so in America, Harry Truman became president. In the book, Dewey became president. And she felt like that needed to be done to bring the space race elements sooner to the forefront, because different personalities from different politicians really does affect what happens. In this world, a meteorite hits the ocean right on the East Coast and has completely altered the climate. So they have to go into space because the world is going to die. So that is their reason for going, and thus makes more sense that why women would be invited earlier into it. But this first book is about the struggles of women getting into the space program, because still the first astronauts were men. Then I have Princess Ben by Catherine Gilbert Murdoch. I would say that this is a YA fantasy. So this was one that really surprised me that it was a 5-star read. I really enjoyed the main character. I liked many of the other characters. The one thing I was not satisfied with this one was the romance. Yeah, so the romance was supposed to be like an enemies to lovers kind of trope, but how they did it, I felt like it was just way too clean, and I feel like they missed the step of developing respect and friendship for one another. Next is The Blade Itself, which is the first book in the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, and I heard of this one from Murphy Napier and Daniel Green. Both of them were talking about it on their channels, and it made me really interested to read it, and so that's why I picked it up. I am not a fan of books that have multiple viewpoints. I could not get through the first book in the Fire and Ice trilogy by George R.R. Martin for that reason, but I feel like Joe Abercrombie did the multiple personalities pretty well. I don't like that he added a character towards the end of the book, but I really enjoy his characterization. This was a book that I was really enjoying, and I suggested to my husband, and he was the one who kind of pointed out that it is not a plot-driven book, it is a character-driven book. And I love character-driven books, and so I think that's why it worked for me, even though it was multiple points of view. And this is an adult grimdark fantasy. Then I read Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This is a YA science fiction. Love my science fiction. I don't always like Brandon Sanderson books. I say it's kind of hit or miss whether I like him. So I was really hopeful that I would like this one. And yes, I did. One of the things I liked about this is we stay focused on Spencer the entire time, who's the main character, and there isn't a romance in this. You see her have deep friendships with males, but there's not a romance element, and so that was really nice to see. Then I read The Haunting of Tramcar 015, and I talked about this briefly in my BookTube newbie post, and this is by P. Jelly Clark. This is an adult fantasy novella, so it's pretty short. Everyone should read it. I would say also that it has a steampunk vibe, though I'm not sure if it was actually a steampunk. And this is also set in an alternate universe in Cairo, where magic is very much present. Also, this book is fun is because it is set in Cairo, so it's not set in an English-speaking world, and that is something that I thought was really cool and really drew me in. Also, I love how Clark writes women. After reading this book, I then went and read the companion novella for this, the one that came before. And so then the next 5-star read was the companion novella, A Dead Djinn in Cairo. And then for my last 5-star read of the first 3 months of 2020 is The Secret Garden, and this one is a reread for me. I don't know what it is, but around the time it gets close to spring is coming and it gets wet, I just have a desire to reread this book. I love it every time. If you have not read this classic, please go read it. it is great. So yeah, that's all my 5-star reads so far in 2020. Can't wait to share my other 5-star reads after June is done. So if you like this video, please go ahead and mark that thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to see more content from me. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.